guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice. All these brothers, my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice.
Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Paul with Spheric Reptiles, and I'm so glad that you tuned in today. When you see this video, I'm going to give out the snake that we had the contest for. There was a winner, and it was relatively fast, a lot faster than I thought it would be. But this person actually lives a little locally, so I'm going to be able to drop it off and not actually have to ship it. So that's great news, right? The guy will be getting the snake that you see right now on the screen. And I'm so happy to give this away as our 1,000 subscriber giveaway. I really feel like with this contest, it was a way of me saying thank you, because for one, I never thought I'd have 1,000 subscribers. And two, I never thought I'd have a YouTube video. So in this video, we'll be talking about the evolution of reptile keeping. And I'll use Jess to explain this. She's a lesser bongo female, and she is sexually mature. She reabsorbed, which is one of the things that you actually learn over time. Hopefully this video will shed some light on some of the things that maybe you're already doing, and just how to evolve your reptile husbandry or keeping so that it continues to help your reptiles live a long and healthy life, which is the goal, right? I mean, if we stay living, we want our reptiles to live too, right? The first thing, as I wrap her, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap her around my hand. So this is one of the things I learned, that if you can grab their tails and kind of secure their heads, it makes them like a little less antsy. But one of the biggest things about owning a reptile, even a ball python, is the amount of time that they live. So most reptiles are very long-lived animals. So if we take the lifespan of a dog and say that a Chihuahua will live for, I've known some that have lived 17 years in our family, or 18 years. But on average, your general reptile that you buy, like if you start at a crested gecko, a gargoyle gecko, a ball python, a boa constrictor, a bearded dragon, they will live at least 15 to 25 years. So that's a commitment. Now, so that's one or two things that you should think about also. So am I going to have this amount of time? And why am I getting this pet? Am I going to breed it? How am I going to house it? And will this evolve over time? So the one good thing is that most people evolve in their habitats for their reptiles. So unless you're breeding them, that's the only time that I know where people will house a lot of reptiles in one space. But that's no different than someone owning a kennel for dogs or any other captive bred animal that they're trying to breed, because you have to have those sterile conditions. If you're trying to breed a large amount of them, if you're breeding a small amount, it doesn't matter. You could keep them in your house. I mean, definitely you can keep snakes in your house, right? Starting with year one, the first thing that you'll be focusing on is the basics of keeping your reptile alive, and as well as getting used to what to do. So where am I going to get my food from? Who am I going to get it from? How often I'm going to get it? What am I going to house my reptile in? How often am I going to clean it? Am I going to buy the full grown size and stuff it full of stuff, hides and whatnot? Or am I going to buy a smaller enclosure and gradually build it up, or get a larger one as my animal gets bigger? These are all questions that you should really be asking, right? And there's no real definitive answer as to which way is right and which way is wrong. The way that I look at it, if your animal is eating and your animal is exhibiting normal behavior, then you're doing the right thing. So that includes having it at the right temperature, the right humidity, everything that you would normally think of. So like thermostats and heat lamps and UV bulbs and fixtures and things like that are just as important as the water dish, the hides, the substrate, the size of enclosure. There's not a one thing that is not important. And as you can remember, she was really small. I'm just going to go back to Jess. She was really small. Now she is, full grown. She's about 1,800 grams now. So she's full grown, and we're going to keep ultrasounding her and see what happens. Moving on to number two, there's lots of fine tuning. And I'm talking about looking at seasonal changes, shed cycles, and reptile health. And what I mean by that is, you've just got through seeing another one of our animals, is that year one through, I'm gonna say two, really, and there's some overlap in this, you're going to just be focusing on the basics. You want to get that general husbandry down. But by years 2 and 3, definitely, you're going to start noticing little seasonal changes with your animals, little behaviors that they have to certain prey items or food, like even certain times of day. So what I would encourage you to do is chart that. Write it down somewhere that you can actually refer back to it. So if anything is different or changes, say your animal always goes off food, or say your animal goes into brumation during this time and just hides all the time, it's best if you know that so that you can look for, remember, healthy behavior and unhealthy behavior. Around year 4 through 5, this is when I think you get the confidence. Now, I used to keep a lot of reptiles for about like maybe 12 years straight, and then I got out of it. And when I got back into it, my learning curve was not as steep because of the lack of information that was out before, and I really charted it. Even then, I found some of my old notes from college and old pictures and things like that, and it gave me a greater sense of comfortability, I think. Comfort? Yeah, comfort. We'll use that word. So it gave me a greater comfort in being able to care for these animals. We did start back with, well, one bearded dragon and just the ball python, but have since evolved to many, many ball pythons and the boa constrictor, which we're going to look into breeding boas as well. One of the things that I'm really able to attribute our success to is the ability to be able to fine tune. So I have all of their feeding schedules like tuned in. I mean, to the point where I know if my animals want to eat a mouse, a African softfoot, or a rat. And if they want a smaller prey size, a larger prey size, if they're like eating in the middle of the day, in the morning, or if they like eating at night. I've actually tested all these things. I found that the majority of our reptiles, with the exception of our boa constrictor, well, and bearded dragon. So ball pythons, I'm sorry guys, but ball pythons, they seem like they prefer to eat at night in a quiet environment. They don't like a lot of noise. They like to focus. I don't know how their eyesight is, but if they're the typical snake, they don't have really great eyesight. But the boa constrictor will eat at any time, and the bearded dragon really prefers to eat in the daytime. When it's like ours prefers to eat in the early morning, so at dawn or dusk. And I mean, that's one of the things that we fine tune for our animals, is just having a chart. Every time we feed, we chart. Every time they shed, we chart it so that we know exactly the humidity that's required for them to shed, the temperature that they like to shed in as well as eat in, and even those that are mating. So you can see what the point that I'm getting to is that you want to actually fine tune as much as you can, any little thing you can do, because that way, again, it's about recognizing whether your animal is exhibiting healthy behaviors or unhealthy behaviors. And if they start exhibiting any unhealthy behaviors, you'll be able to pick right up on it because you've been looking at it, you've been charting it, and God forbid that you have to go to the vet. But if you have to, at least you have a clear and definitive way to explain the sickness or the behaviors of your animals, because this is how a lot of vets will determine what your animal has and which direction to go. They'll actually ask you questions, or they'll look at the animal's overall health and well-being and whether it's exhibiting a healthy behavior or an unhealthy behavior. Now we're getting into year 6 and 7. So you've been keeping, say, Jess for 6 or 7 years, which she's not. She's almost 3. So yeah, so at around 6 or 7, let me just put her over my shoulder. Hopefully she'll stay. So at 6 or 7 years, now we start thinking about the lifespans of our animals. Inevitably, some of our animals will die prematurely, right? So, and that's with everything you do correctly. But the same thing happens to humans. One of the things that you'll notice is around the year 6 and 7 is that you kind of can set a benchmark as to if you're having a lot of animals die prematurely at around 6 or 7 years, and they should be living for 15 or 25, you should really look at your husbandry more intact, or maybe see if that's the species that you need to be keeping all together. And it's gut wrenching, right? So if that happens, I've had an animal die on me. I've had a couple of animals over the course of my reptile keeping just die, you know. So back when I first started keeping reptiles, I did get imported animals, and some of them came in with parasites. And, you know, first thing you gotta do is take them to the vet to see if you can get these intestinal and these stomach parasites removed. And sometimes I had a Savannah monitor that it was just so far infested that we tried, and eventually the vet euthanized the Savannah monitor. So that was one of the reasons why, as Spheric Reptiles, I said, if we do this, I don't want to import any animals. No knock on anyone who does, but I just don't want to go through that gut wrenching part again. And it happened a couple of times with 2 different monitors, and it just really you know, you become attached to your animals, and I still haven't gotten over that. So it's just one of the things that you have to think about. But I definitely would have that benchmark of measurement to say, well, my animals are at this weight, they're at this size on average compared to the average animal of the same species, in which you can actually, by the 6th or 7th year, you should probably get to know someone that keeps your same species or an expert in that field so that they can actually explain it to you. And that way you can kind of adjust some more. You know, it's a continual learning thing, but you can fine tune everything that you're doing. Look at her getting in striking modes because of my hand. But that's, you can fine tune everything. And that's one of the key things that you can do. So I've learned that if that happens, just put your hand down and then it'll calm. The snake doesn't have anything to focus on. So, you know, that's what you can do during years 6 and 7 and not get bit. You feel me? Don't getting bit is no fun. Through years 8 and 10, now, hopefully by now you're an expert and you can give information to other people. And what I mean by that is you can, you know, go to symposiums, you can go to expos, especially if it's one like the Daytona Reptile Breeders Expo. They do actual symposiums where they have discussions from major thought leaders with that species, and they discuss husbandry, they discuss habitat protection in the wild, proper ways to keep them, and things like that. So that's one of the things that you should be gearing up for, because there still isn't a lot of information that's just past basic information on these reptiles. Now, if you have a species like ball pythons, because they represent the greater percentage and number of reptiles being kept, then you can. The same thing for boa constrictors, crested geckos, any of those top 5s. But if you start getting into some of the smaller bred, captively held animals, then you find that if you're looking for blue tree monitors, then your information pool is a lot smaller. So you have a smaller pool. Maybe you can use zoos as your source or something like that, or a breeder, if you can find one that's captively breeding them. We have Corey Martin here in Texas that's breeding those tree monitors, the blue, the green, and the yellow. So that's one thing that you can actually do, is reach out to one of those breeders. But again, if you become an expert, I would really encourage you to have discussions about your animals to other people so that we can get more of these animals being captively bred instead of taken out of their native habitat. And that's the goal, to have your animals live healthy, long lives, and that you can captively breed them. And that way the joy of the reptile ownership for the pet that you have or the animal species that you have can be spread on to someone else, and they can be successful with it too, instead of them getting the animal and it just not being a good experience for the keeper or the animal. So guys, I really love reptiles. I love discussing it. I'm really glad to have this channel so that I can actually video my animals as they grow in their lifespan. I use this a lot for our own charting, and that's one of the reasons why I started the channel. But I thank you so much for subscribing and liking these videos. Please hit the like button this time, and please subscribe if you haven't already. But if nothing else, guys, enjoy the time that you spend with your reptiles and enjoy the time that you have with your family. Thank you.